It's Organ Donor Enrollment Day. Have you registered?
I think that's really what's important, is to make sure that we're conscious of the choice we can make.
To tell you why this small step can have a big impact, your host, New York State Senator David Carlucci.
Hi, I'm Senator David Carlucci, and I'm here with Roxanne Watson. Roxanne has really been a champion when it comes to organ donation and has really influenced and inspired thousands and thousands of people here in New York State and across the country. It's been 10 years since Roxanne received her life-saving organ transplant, and she spent some time, 2 years, on the waiting list. And I believe 3 months waiting in a hospital before she had that life-saving heart transplant. And Roxanne is a real inspiration. I've had the real fortune of being able to spend a lot of time with Roxanne at so many different events around the state and around the community where she talks about her experience. And it's so moving and so inspirational. And this is someone who really doesn't just talk the talk, really walks the walk, and is an inspiration to me, and I know so many other people. So with that, Roxanne, thank you so much for joining us on this Zoomathon to support organ donation. And if you could tell us a little bit about your story, about where you were 12 years ago before you had this condition, and where it's brought you.
Can't even believe it. You say 12 years, it's like, well,
I know, flies by.
It does fly by. Well, 12 years ago, I suffered what they called a silent heart attack. I was working in a truck, and I got a pain in my side, and I didn't think anything of it. I went back and forth to work with that pain, and then about 6 weeks later, I went down to Nyack Hospital and to the ER department and got evaluation. I told them I pulled a muscle, and they were like, well, how long ago did you do that? I said, about 6 weeks ago. And they said, we're going to do some tests. And they did some tests, and then they came back to me and they said, no, you didn't pull a muscle. You had a heart attack.
Wow.
So for 6 weeks, I walked around with a heart attack. And of course, in all of that time, my heart was being damaged. Mm-hmm. They put me in cardiac care here in Rockland County. And for 2 years, I stayed in cardiac care. And finally, Dr. Parikh came to me and said, you're not getting any better. We're going to have to send you to New York City for advanced cardiac care. They sent me to Montefiore in the Bronx, and after 9 days of evaluation, Dr. Shin came to me and said, we have good news and we have bad news. I said, give me the bad news first. She said, the bad news is your heart is failing. But the good news is we're going to put you on a transplant list. And it shouldn't be that long. You know, you're young, you'll be fine, and you're healthy other than your heart. And there I sat on that transplant list for 2 years, from June 2008 until they listed me. Well, they listed me in June 2008. And I didn't get my heart until July of 2010. It was rough. It was a rough go.
Wow.
Toward the end of that stay, in April of 2010 is when they put me in the hospital because I was too sick to stay home. She said, if you stay home, you're going to die. And they put me in CCU, and there I sat in CCU for almost 80 days.
Wow.
It was terrible, just terrible. Wow. And when I was in that hospital, I vowed that if I lived, and God let me live, that I would do this work to make sure that nobody had to go through that ever again in life. It was terrible.
And now you've really lived up to that promise, and I know it firsthand because I've experienced you in action. And Roxanne is someone that if you get within, 20 feet of Roxanne, she's going to ask you if you're an organ donor and pull out the card and get you registered. And that's something that we are all so grateful for, your hard work and tenacity and perseverance. Because I know you've talked to some people there where they've said no to you, and then they've actually turned around, but it wasn't easy. It took some time. So
quite a few people.
where are we now? How many, I'm sure COVID has really taken a hit in terms of all of us getting people registered, but especially you, because everywhere I go as a senator in the community, Roxanne is there. If there's an opportunity to talk about the situation, to get someone registered, Roxanne is there. You can count on it. So I know when I last checked with you, you had over 11,000 people that you had
Yeah.
personally signed up to be an organ donor. What's the number at now?
We're about 11,600
Wow,
right now. Yeah.
that's
We
awesome.
actually, it's much harder, obviously, on
Oh
Zoom.
yeah.
But we did do a Zoom last week with Nyack Hospital, and we
Mhm.
signed up somebody on the Zoom. So, I
Oh,
mean, there's
great.
hope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to adapt to.
Yeah.
Well, I
Absolutely.
see. I see Michael's photo right there beside you, and maybe you
Yeah.
could tell those watching on this Zoomathon about Michael and your donor.
This is my donor, Michael Beauville. He was 23 years old at the time of his passing. He had a motorcycle accident on the George Washington Bridge, and in that accident, he was able to save five New Yorkers. He saved a little Hispanic girl from Staten Island who was 5 years old at the time. 18-year-old African American boy was in the Bronx, actually in the same hospital as I, got his kidney. A 42-year-old Jewish man in Manhattan at Columbia got his double lungs. He had cystic fibrosis. And a 62-year-old Chinese man at Mount Sinai. He got his liver. So he saved all of us. And we went from age 5 all the way to 62. So it was all different ages. We were all different religions. We were all different races. And we illustrate this by saying anybody can save anybody. It has nothing to do with age or race or any of those things. It's just a matter of blood and tissue.
Hmm.
And we all have that, so we can all share that.
You keep in touch with Michael's family, and I've actually had the privilege of meeting Michael's family at your house one time, and also talking with his family on the phone. I know his sister is now in Colorado, I believe, right? We had her on the phone the other day, and it was great to talk to her and his parents. And but you have really been in the front lines, whether it's here in the community or nationally, talking on a TV show or a radio, wherever it is, you don't hesitate to go forward. The question I have for you is what are some of the obstacles that we're still facing in terms of organ donation? I mean, obviously, COVID is a big issue. There's no question about it. But what are some of the things, maybe conversations that you've had? You've had thousands of them. What are some of
Yeah.
the frequent themes that you hear and challenges we have in our pursuit to get more people registered to be organ donors?
The biggest myth that we always hear at every table that we ever do is if I have an accident, they're not going to try to save me because they know I'm an organ donor. That still is the biggest misconception that we have. And we try to explain to people that the people who are trying to save your life and the people that are involved with transplantation are completely different people,
Hmm.
completely different teams. No one even knows that you're a donor until you pass. And
Hmm.
at that point, Live On New York is, what do you say? Contacted,
Hmm.
and then the process begins. And that's a different process. So, those people have nothing to do with the other people. Another
Hmm.
one is religion. People believe
Hmm.
that their religion doesn't say. And then we've had rabbis, we've even had the Pope do an
Hmm.
edict. He did an edict for organ donation to say organ donation is a treasure and a healing treasure for a donor family. So all of the major religions support it, Islam, all of them. So we
Hmm.
have to get that through. But what we do in those cases, we ask the people to contact their local, you know, clergy person,
Hmm.
to have that conversation, have that personal conversation. And then the other problem is people may sign up, but they don't tell their family.
Hmm.
So then, there's a time that someone has to make a decision and their family's not clear because they've never had the conversation. And we say, yes, we want everybody to sign up. There's no problem with that. But we
Right.
also want everybody to have that conversation because in the end, it's not going to be you that makes that decision. It's going
Right.
to be your family. It's going to be a family member or someone close. So have the conversation. Really
Well,
important.
that's what I think as an elected official, as someone that's written laws and passed laws to promote organ donation, that still the biggest and most important thing we can do is to share the stories, to share your story, to share Lauren Shield's story, to share those stories so people have those examples and they're cognizant of it. That many
Yes.
times, I'm sure when you approach someone for the first time, they've they've just never thought about this. It's
Right.
something we don't want to think about. We don't want to have this conversation at the dinner table. We want to, talk about other things. But by doing that, it's so important for helping the cause, but also helping your family as well. That
Yes.
in their darkest times, that they know that there's some clarity, and that they knew, hey, they wanted to be an organ donor, and they know that can be so that can be really, really important.
When you were with me, you heard Michael's father say
Mm,
that very same thing. He
right.
said that they knew that he probably wasn't going to make it, and they were sure that he wasn't. When they were sure that he wasn't, the biggest comfort him and his wife had was making the decision to go ahead and save lives.
Yeah.
They knew that
Yep.
they were going to, that he would have wanted to save lives and that he was going to save lives. And the fact that he saved five of us, it's amazing. It's a miracle.
Yeah. It really is, and it's such a powerful example of why this is so important in this time of COVID. How did that work when you were doing the virtual the Zoom trying to register people online?
Yeah, it's getting better, but at the beginning,
Okay.
when we first started, nobody was, there was no, the transplants were shut down, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
None of the hospitals, none of the centers were doing them because their total focus was on COVID. And COVID
Right.
patients can't donate because, there's so much science that we don't know about. So
Right.
the donations went down to nothing. But they're starting to, come back, especially kidneys, the paired kidney exchanges are starting to come back first, and the other centers are starting to open it up. But no, we weren't even talking about organ donation for 2 or 3 months.
All the standard practices that we do, just we couldn't
Yes.
do them. Whether it's something as having Live On New York in the hospitals, or having people like yourself at fairs, at events, it just didn't happen. So everything was pushed aside.
We didn't do any of the blood drives. We didn't do
Hmm.
any of the libraries. We did no street fairs. I mean, there were so many opportunities where we necessarily would have signed up thousands of people at the
Yep.
colleges.
I mean, you've
Yes,
signed up thousands of people just at
thousands.
Rockland Community College and some of the other colleges too.
Absolutely. We
So
sign up 100 in a day,
yeah.
and when we would have our fairs there. So we missed
Mhm.
a lot of opportunities and to educate and to share the story. So it's not that we can catch up, but we gotta get it moving. We share
Yes.
a lot of the information on our radio show on
Hmm.
WRCR. And thank you for being my guest there too, my co-host. And we're trying to get the word out any way we can get it out.
Yeah, and tell people when and where your show is.
Well, the show is on every Wednesday morning on WRCR, and you can listen to it on air, or you can tune in on the computer at WRCR.com, and it's called Michael's Gifts. We
Awesome.
dedicated it to Michael, and the reason why we dedicated the show is because just the conversation that we're having, that we need to reach more people with our stories. And basically, the whole premise of the entire show is we have donors, recipients, family members, everybody that's related in any way to organ donation comes on the show and tells their stories. That's
Yeah,
what we want them to do.
that's
It's
great.
not no big medical thing or no
Hmm.
technical thing. It's just people sharing stories. Hmm.
Right. And you just never know how it influences someone. You never
And it
know.
always
So
does. Every week I
yes.
get messages from all over the country because that show can be listened to all over the world. We have
Yeah.
guests from all over the world. We had last week from Sweden, the week before that from UK. So we can see how different countries also are dealing with organ donation. So it's been a very good success. I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, no, well, thank you for doing that, and thank you for just continuing your persistence in doing whatever you can to help this cause and build awareness, get more people registered. If you can, if those that are watching, tune in to Michael's Gifts, Roxanne's show. It's a great program. And Roxanne, I want to thank you for joining me today on this brief interview. And
Anytime.
thank you for pushing and pushing and pushing and because
Thank
of
you.
you, we're much better off.
And thank you for being a champion for the cause for all of these years. You were the first one that I met that was working on this, and we've been working on it ever since, and I appreciate that, and the whole community does.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening. Today is Organ Donor Enrollment Day, a day dedicated to inspiring New Yorkers just like you to sign up as an organ donor. To become an organ donor, please visit the link on your screen or visit Senator Carlucci's Facebook page.